Commander Vexteros stood in the center of the gleaming observation deck, her four arms crossed in a gesture of barely contained irritation. Through the massive viewport, the blue-green world of Earth hung like a jewel against the black canvas of space. The human delegation ship approached slowly, its crude metal hull scarred and patched from countless battles. "Look at that pathetic vessel," she sneered to her second-in-command, Captain Zoltan. "These humans dare to request membership in the Galactic Federation with technology that belongs in a museum." Zoltan's translator crackled as he responded. "The Federation Council believes they show promise, Commander. Their recent victories against the Kethari pirates were unexpected." Unexpected? Vexteros' mandibles clicked in amusement. "Burilak. The Kethari probably died laughing at their primitive weapons." She gestured dismissively toward the approaching ship. "Today, we will demonstrate why the Veiltari Empire remains the Federation's premier military force. These humans need to understand their place." The docking bay echoed with the hiss of atmosphere processors as the human ship settled onto the landing platform. Vextera had arranged for an impressive display of force. 24 of her finest warriors stood at attention, their energy weapons gleaming, their biomechanical armor humming with power. Each soldier represented the pinnacle of galactic military evolution, enhanced with cybernetic implants and wielding weapons that could level city blocks. The human delegation emerged from their ship, and Vextera fought back another sneer. They wore simple uniforms of some primitive fabric, carried basic projectile weapons, and moved with the unaugmented reflexes of baseline biologicals. At their head walked a woman of average height, her brown hair pulled back in a functional ponytail. What caught Vextera's attention was the archaic sword strapped to the woman's side. "Welcome to Federation Space Station Alpha 7, Vextera announced, her voice amplified by the translation matrix. "I am Commander Vextera of the Veiltari Imperial Navy. You stand before the finest military force in known space." The human woman stepped forward, offering a slight bow. "Thank you for receiving us, Commander. I am Colonel Sarachun of the United Earth Defense Corps. We're honored by this opportunity." Vextera's eyes fixed on the weapon at Chen's side. "That's quite an interesting relic you carry, Colonel. Is that some sort of ceremonial piece?" Chen's hand moved instinctively to the sword's hilt. "This is my combat blade, Commander. Standard issue for UEDC officers." The sound that emerged from Vextera's throat might have been laughter if it hadn't been so filled with contempt. A metal blade? In the age of plasma weaponry and quantum disruptors. She turned to address her gathered warriors. "Observe, soldiers. This is what passes for military technology among the humans." Several of her warriors joined in the mocking sounds, their various alien anatomies producing a chorus of derision. Chen's expression remained neutral, but Vextera noticed her grip tighten slightly on the sword's handle. "Perhaps," Vextera continued, warming to her audience, "you'd be interested in a demonstration of real military capability? My weapons master could show you what true galactic technology can accomplish." A massive figure stepped forward from the Veiltari ranks. Korash stood nearly 3 meters tall, his exoskeleton gleaming with built-in weapon systems. Energy conduits pulsed along his arms, feeding power to plasma cannons that could punch through starship hull plating. "This is Korash," Vextera announced. "His combat modifications cost more than your entire ship. Perhaps he could demonstrate proper weapons technique." Chen looked around the assembled crowd of aliens, each one regarding her with mixture of amusement and contempt. The human delegation behind her remained silent, but she could feel the tension radiating from them. This wasn't supposed to be a combat demonstration. They'd come here in good faith, seeking partnership. "I appreciate the offer," Chun said carefully, "but we didn't come here to fight. We came to discuss how Earth might contribute to the Federation's goals." "Contribute?" Vextera's mandibles clicked rapidly. What could a species that still uses metal blades possibly contribute to an interstellar civilization? The insult hung in the air like a challenge. Chun could feel the weight of her sword at her side, the familiar comfort of its grip. She'd carried this blade through the siege of Luna's city, across the radioactive wastes of Mars, and into the depths of Europa's ice caverns. It had saved her life more times than she could count, not through any special properties, but through the skill she developed wielding it. Our blades may be simple, Chen said quietly, but they've proven effective. Korash let out a sound that the translator interpreted as contemptuous laughter. Effective against what? Wild animals? Primitive raiders? Against the Kethari, actually. Chen's voice carried no boast, just simple fact. The laughter died. Every alien in the chamber knew the Kethari reputation. They were the Federation's nightmare, a race of warrior pirates who had terrorized the outer systems for decades. Their ships were fast, their weapons devastating, and their tactics ruthless. Many Federation worlds paid tribute rather than face them in open combat. The Kethari were driven from our system using ships and weapons you consider relics, Chen continued. Perhaps effectiveness isn't always about having the most advanced technology. Vextara's expression shifted from amusement to irritation. The Kethari retreat from no one. If they left your system, it was for their own reasons. They left because we destroyed their fleet. Chen's voice remained level, professional. 17 ships, including their flagship. No survivors. The chamber fell silent. Even Vextara seemed taken aback by the claim. The Kethari had never suffered a defeat of that magnitude, not even against the combined forces of 3 Federation fleets. You're lying, Korash growled, his weapon systems beginning to charge. Primitive humans could never. The battle records are available through your diplomatic channels, Chen interrupted. Admiral Thainkar of the Zephyrian Navy witnessed the engagement. I believe he filed a report with Federation Command. Vextara's face went through several color changes as she accessed her command implants, pulling up the official reports. Her expression grew more troubled with each passing second. Impossible, she whispered. The Kethari war chief Grakmore. His ship was supposedly indestructible. Indestructible is a dangerous word to use around humans, Chen replied. We tend to take it as a challenge. The tension in the chamber was now palpable. What had begun as a simple diplomatic meeting was rapidly becoming something else entirely. Vextara found herself in an impossible position. The official reports confirmed the human claims, but accepting them meant acknowledging that a supposedly primitive species had accomplished something the mighty Federation had failed to do for decades. Even if your claims are true, Vextara said finally, it changes nothing. Primitive weapons and tactics may occasionally produce lucky results, but they cannot compete with true military science. Chen nodded thoughtfully. You may be right, Commander. Would you like to test that theory? The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Every being in the chamber understood the implication. This was no longer about diplomatic protocol or Federation membership. This had become a matter of honor, of proving which philosophy of warfare was superior. Vextara looked around at her assembled warriors, each one representing the pinnacle of galactic military evolution. Then, she looked at the human woman with her ancient sword and primitive uniform. The choice should have been obvious, but something in Chen's eyes gave her pause. There was no fear there, no uncertainty, just the calm confidence of someone who had faced death and emerged victorious more times than she could count. Very well, Vextara said finally. A demonstration, then. Korash against your Relic. Chen's hand moved to her sword, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she smiled. The combat arena materialized around them as the station's holographic systems activated. What had moments before been a simple docking bay transformed into a circular fighting ground surrounded by energy barriers. The assembled aliens pressed against the barriers, their various eyes and sensory organs focused on the two figures now standing 20 meters apart. Korash powered up his combat systems with theatrical flair. Plasma conduits along his arms glowed white-hot as energy built up in his weapon arrays. His exoskeleton's servos whined as they adjusted to combat specifications, and targeting systems projected holographic overlays across his visual field. The air around him shimmered with heat distortion from his power core running at full capacity. "This is weapons-grade plasma," Korash announced, his translator making his voice boom across the arena. "Each burst contains enough energy to vaporize a combat shuttle. My targeting system can track and engage 17 separate targets simultaneously. My reflexes are enhanced to respond within 0.003 seconds of threat detection." Colonel Chun stood quietly on the opposite side of the arena, her hand resting on her sword's pommel. She wore no armor beyond her simple uniform, carried no energy weapons or technological enhancements. To the watching aliens, she looked impossibly fragile against her opponent's display of raw technological superiority. "Impressive specifications," Chun said, her voice carrying clearly across the arena despite speaking at normal volume. "May I ask how many actual combat engagements you survived, Korash?" The massive warrior's posture stiffened. "I have trained extensively in all combat scenarios. My victory in this engagement is mathematically certain." "That wasn't my question." Commander Vexteral watched the exchange with growing unease. Something about the human's calm demeanor reminded her of the old veterans she'd known, the ones who had survived wars that killed millions. They had that same quality of stillness, that same way of watching everything without appearing to watch anything at all. "Combat experience is irrelevant when facing superior technology," Korash declared. "Observe the power of galactic military science." The first plasma burst erupted from his right arm cannon, a ball of superheated gas that would have instantly killed any unprotected biological. Chun wasn't where the blast struck. She had moved before Korash's targeting system registered the motion, flowing to one side with fluid grace that spoke of decades of training. "Interesting," Chun commented as she continued moving, her path a seemingly random weaving pattern that kept her just ahead of Korash's targeting systems. "Your plasma has excellent destructive capability, but the energy buildup creates a distinctive electromagnetic signature. About a 1.2-second charge cycle, if I'm reading it correctly." Korash fired again, this time with both arm cannons. Chun dropped into a roll that carried her beneath the energy blasts, came up running, and closed half the distance between them before the warrior could recalibrate his aim. 1.2 seconds is a long time in a knife fight," Chun added conversationally. The watching aliens began to murmur among themselves. What they were seeing shouldn't have been possible. Korash's targeting computer was military-grade Federation technology, capable of tracking hypersonic projectiles. No baseline biological should have been able to move fast enough to evade it. Korash activated his full weapon array. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and micromissile launchers all came online simultaneously. The arena filled with a deadly light show as he unleashed everything he had at the human. Chun moved through the barrage like she was dancing. Every step was precise, calculated, efficient. She wasted no motion, made no unnecessary moves. When a plasma bolt passed close enough to singe her uniform, she didn't flinch. When a micromissile detonated near her position, she used the explosion shockwave to augment her movement. How was she doing this? Vexteral whispered to her aide. No unaugmented being should possess such reflexes. Captain Zoltan was studying his tactical displays with confusion. Her movement patterns, they're not random, Commander. She's using some form of predictive combat algorithm, but without any computing assistance. On the arena floor, Chun had closed to within 5 meters of her opponent. Korash's weapons were designed for long-range engagement. At this distance, their effectiveness dropped dramatically. He tried to back away, but Chun moved with him, maintaining the optimal range for her advantage. "You're making a tactical error," she called out as she avoided another plasma burst. "You're fighting the battle your weapons want to fight, not the battle your opponent is forcing on you." Korash roared in frustration and charged, his massive exoskeleton thundering across the arena floor. If he couldn't hit her at range, he would use his size and strength to crush her directly. Chun drew her sword. The blade sang as it cleared its sheath, a sound so pure and clean that it cut through the arena's noise like a bell. In the artificial light, the metal gleamed with an inner radiance that spoke of perfect balance, flawless craftsmanship, and countless hours of careful maintenance. Korash's charge brought him within range of the ancient weapon. Chun moved to meet him, her blade describing an arc so beautiful it seemed more like art than warfare. The sword struck Korash's exoskeleton at the joint between his chest plate and left arm assembly. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The blade looked impossibly tiny against the massive technological construct of the warrior's armor. Then, Korash's left arm assembly fell away, severed cleanly at the connection point. The arena fell silent except for the hiss of escaping hydraulic fluid and the whine of damaged servos. Korash stared down his severed arm assembly, his expression unreadable behind his helmet's display. "Impossible," he whispered. "That armor is composed of enhanced titanium carbide matrix. No primitive blade could—" "It's not about the blade," Chen said quietly, her sword still at ready position. "It's about understanding where to place it." She had struck at the exact point where the arm assembly connected to the main body, finding the microscopic gap in the armor's protection. It wasn't strength that had severed the connection, but precise knowledge of mechanical engineering combined with surgical accuracy. Vextara's mind raced as she tried to process what she had witnessed. The human hadn't overcome the warrior's armor through brute force or superior technology. She had defeated it through understanding, through seeing weaknesses that Korash's own systems had been designed to protect. Your exoskeleton's design prioritizes protection and firepower, Chen continued, circling the now cautious warrior. But every joint represents a compromise between mobility and armor coverage. Every power coupling is a potential failure point. Every system interface creates vulnerability. Korash tried to bring his remaining weapons to bear, but Chun was already moving again. This time, her sword found the power coupling feeding his right leg assembly. Sparks flew as the blade severed the connection with mathematical precision. "The problem with making soldiers dependent on technology," Chun said as Korash struggled to maintain balance with his failing systems, "is that they forget how to fight without it." The warrior's remaining systems began to shut down in sequence as his power core, damaged by the severed connections, went into emergency mode. Within seconds, he was trapped inside his own armor, a prisoner of the technology that was supposed to make him invincible. "I yield," he said quietly. Chun sheathed her sword and bowed formally to her fallen opponent. "You fought with honor, Korash. Your courage is not in question." The arena's energy barriers deactivated, and the watching aliens began to file out in stunned silence. What they had witnessed challenged everything they thought they knew about military superiority and technological advantage. Commander Vextara remained behind, staring at the human who had just dismantled her finest warrior with a weapon older than spaceflight itself. "Ow," she asked simply. Chen looked up at her with those same calm eyes. "We've been fighting wars longer than your species has had written language, Commander. We've learned that the most dangerous opponent isn't always the one with the best equipment." 3 days after the demonstration in the arena, Commander Vextara found herself staring at classified files in her private quarters. The soft blue glow of her holographic displays cast strange shadows on the curved walls of her chambers, and the reports floating before her seemed to mock everything she thought she knew about human capabilities. The first file contained surveillance footage from the Kethari conflict. She watched human ships, crude and angular compared to Federation designs, engaging a pirate fleet with tactics that made no sense according to galactic military doctrine. The humans used their ships like projectile weapons, ramming Kethari vessels at speeds that should have destroyed both craft. But somehow, the human ships held together while their targets disintegrated. "Computer, analyze human vessel construction," she commanded. Analysis complete. Human vessels utilize redundant structural systems with primitive but effective damage control. Hull composition includes steel alloys considered obsolete by current galactic standards, yet demonstrating unexpected resilience under extreme stress conditions. Steel. They built their warships out of steel, the same material ancient civilizations used for basic tools. Yet those steel ships had torn through a Kethari fleet that had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades. The second file contained medical scans of the human delegation. Vexthera had ordered the scans after Chen's impossible performance against Core Ash, expecting to find hidden cybernetic enhancements or genetic modifications. Instead, the results showed something far more disturbing. Computer, display comparative analysis of human physiology versus galactic standard. Human subjects show no artificial enhancements. Bone density, 200% above galactic average. Muscle fiber efficiency, 340% above galactic average. Cardiovascular system demonstrates exceptional stress tolerance. Brain structure indicates high capacity for pattern recognition and predictive processing. Vexthera's mandibles clicked nervously. Computer, these readings suggest the humans are naturally enhanced super soldiers. Confirm accuracy of scans. Scans confirmed accurate. Additional note. Based on available data, human subjects appear to represent baseline of their species, not enhanced variants. The third file made her blood run cold. It contained detailed analysis of the blade that had so easily defeated Core Ash's advanced armor. She had expected to find some exotic material or hidden technology. Instead, she found something much worse. Computer, summarize analysis of human weapon. Blade composition, iron-carbon alloy with trace elements. Construction method, traditional forging techniques. Estimated age, approximately 15 standard years. Notable characteristics, perfect molecular alignment due to repeated folding process. Edge geometry optimized through experience-based refinement. 15 years old, Chun had defeated one of the galaxy's most advanced warriors with a sword she'd been carrying for 15 years. A sword made from iron and carbon, materials so common they were used for industrial waste containers on most worlds. But it was the fourth file that truly shook her worldview. This one contains psychological profiles of the human delegation, compiled by the Federation's best xenopsychologists. Computer, display psychological analysis summary. Human delegation exhibits consistent patterns. High stress tolerance, exceptional situational awareness, evidence of extensive combat experience. Notable finding. All subjects show indicators of what human military doctrine terms veteran status. Estimated minimum combat experience. 5 to 7 years active warfare per individual. Vexthera sat back in her command chair, trying to process the implications. Every human in the delegation was a combat veteran. Not just trained soldiers, but beings who had survived years of actual warfare. The galaxy's other species produced veterans occasionally, usually after decades of military service. Humans seemed to mass-produce them. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Captain Zoltan's image appeared in her display, his expression troubled. Commander, we've received a priority message from Federation Command. They're requesting a detailed report on the human demonstration. What kind of report? A tactical assessment, specifically. They want to know if human military capabilities pose a threat to Federation security. Vexthera felt a chill run down her spine. Federation Command didn't ask for threat assessments unless they were seriously concerned about potential conflicts. Schedule a meeting with Colonel Chun, she ordered. I have questions that need answers. An hour later, Chun sat across from Vexthera in the commander's ready room. The human looked relaxed, almost casual, but Vexthera had learned to recognize the deceptive nature of human body language. Chun was alert and ready for anything. Colonel, I've been reviewing your species' military history. Vexthera began carefully. The records are concerning. Chun raised an eyebrow. In what way? Your species has been in a continuous state of warfare for its entire recorded history. Even now, with your homeworld unified, you maintain military forces larger than some galactic sectors. Peace through strength is a basic principle of human diplomacy, Chun replied. We've learned that being prepared for war is the best way to avoid it. But your preparation seems excessive. According to our analysis, every adult human has received basic military training. Your civilian population could be mobilized into an army within weeks. Chin's expression didn't change, but Vexthera caught a slight tightening around her eyes. Commander, are you asking if humanity represents a military threat to the Federation? The direct question hung in the air between them. Vextera realized she had crossed a line from diplomatic inquiry into security interrogation. I'm trying to understand, Vextera said honestly. Your people fought the Kethari with obsolete technology and won. Your soldiers carry weapons we consider antiques and defeat our most advanced warriors. Your ships are built from materials we use for construction scaffolding, yet they destroyed an entire pirate fleet. How? Chan was quiet for a long moment, studying the alien commander across from her. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that seemed to press against the room itself. Commander, do you know what it takes to survive on Earth? I've read the environmental reports. A standard Class M world with no, Chen interrupted. Not the technical specifications. What actually takes to survive. She stood and walked to the viewport, gazing out at the stars beyond. Earth isn't a peaceful world, Commander. Everything on our planet is trying to kill everything else. The weather can shift from gentle rain to devastating storms in hours. The ground shakes without warning, splitting open to swallow cities. Fire falls from the sky during dry seasons. The ocean spawn massive storms that level entire coastlines. Vextera listened in growing unease as Chun continued. But that's just the environment. The life forms are worse. We share our world with predators that can bite through steel, venomous creatures that can kill with a single sting, microscopic organisms that wage constant biological warfare against anything with a functioning immune system. Most worlds have dangerous flora and fauna not like Earth. Chin turned back to face her. On Earth, the prey animals are dangerous. Our food sources fight back. The plants can be poisonous. The water can be toxic. The air itself can kill you if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. She returned to her seat, her expression serious. Humans are naturally superior varios. Comende. We're naturally desperate survivors. Every instinct we possess, every capability we've developed, every technology we've created has been shaped by 10 million years of barely avoiding extinction. Vextera felt her understanding of human nature shifting like sand beneath her feet. You're saying your military capabilities are a side effect of evolutionary pressure? I'm saying we don't know how to be anything else, Chen replied. When we developed agriculture, we had to defend it from both natural disasters and rival tribes. When we built cities, we had to protect them from floods, earthquakes, and hostile neighbors. When we reached for the stars, we brought those same survival instincts with us. But surely, with your technological advancement, technology doesn't change what we are, Commander. It just gives us better tools to do what we've always done, survive against impossible odds. Chen leaned forward slightly. That's why my sword works. It's not about the blade itself. It's about the 10,000 years of human experience that went into learning how to use it. Vextera was beginning to understand the true scope of humanity's difference from other galactic species. Most civilizations developed in relatively stable environments, with predictable challenges and gradual technological progression. Humanity had evolved in constant crisis, developing an entire culture based on adaptation, improvisation, and survival. Your delegation, Vextera said slowly, they're all veterans of multiple conflicts. Every human adult is a veteran of something, Commander. If not military conflict, then natural disaster, economic collapse, social upheaval, or personal crisis. We don't have the luxury of peaceful development. Vextera paused, searching for the right words. That's terrifying. Chen's smile held no warmth. Yes, it is. But it's also why we're still here when most species would have gone extinct millions of years ago. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm echoing through the station. Emergency lights bathed the ready room in red as Captain Zoltan's voice crackled over the communication system. Commander, we have a situation. Long-range sensors are detecting an incoming Kethari fleet. 17 ships, including what appears to be their new flagship. ETA, 6 hours. Vextera felt her blood freeze. The Kethari had never attacked a Federation station directly. This was an act of open war. Chin was already on her feet, her entire demeanor shifting into combat readiness. Commander, with your permission, I'd like to contact my ship. Colonel, this station has significant defensive capabilities. Your vessel should remain docked for protection. Chin's expression was grim but determined. Respectfully, Commander, I don't think you understand what we're dealing with. The Kethari don't attack unless they're certain of victory. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that 17 Kethari ships wouldn't come here unless they had a way to neutralize this station's defenses. Chin was already moving toward the door. But I also know something about the Kethari that your databases might not contain. Which is? Chin paused at the door, her hand resting on her sword's hilt. They remember what happened to their fleet in our system, and they want revenge. The command center of Federation Station Alpha 7 hummed with controlled panic as officers from dozens of species worked frantically at their stations. Holographic displays showed the approaching Kethari fleet as red points of light moving steadily toward their position. Commander Vexteros stood at the central tactical display, her 4 arms dancing across control interfaces as she coordinated the station's defenses. Shields at maximum power, reported Lieutenant Kethvar from the defense station. All weapon systems online and tracking the incoming fleet. Fighter squadrons are launching now, added Commander Zixala of the station's aerospace division. 24 ships deploying in defensive formation. Colonel Chan stood beside the main display. Her human delegation spread throughout the command center, offering assistance where they could. The sight of humans calmly working alongside alien officers would have been remarkable under normal circumstances. Now, with death approaching at faster-than-light speeds, it seemed almost natural. Colonel, Vexthera said without taking her eyes off the displays, your ship's captain has been trying to reach you. Something about tactical options. Chin nodded and activated her personal communicator. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the device with typical human directness. Colonel, we've been analyzing the Kethari formation. They're using a modified warsphere approach, but there's something wrong with their flagship's positioning. Define wrong, Captain. It's hanging back, staying at the edge of their formation. That's not standard Kethari tactics. Their war chiefs usually lead from the front. Chin studied the tactical display, her eyes following the movement patterns of the approaching fleet. Rodriguez was right. The Kethari flagship, a massive vessel bristling with exotic weapons, was maintaining position at the rear of the formation instead of spearheading the attack. Captain Zoltan, she called the Vexthera's second-in-command. What's the range on your long-range sensors? Approximately 0.3 light-years at current resolution, he replied. Why do you ask? Because I think your Kethari problem is bigger than 17 ships. The command center fell silent, except for the soft hum of electronic systems. Every eye turned toward Chun as she walked to the main tactical display. Computer, extend sensor range to maximum. Scan for energy signatures consistent with Kethari technology in a sphere around our current position. Vexthera's mandibles clicked nervously. Colonel, that will drain our power reserves and leave us vulnerable if... Commander, Chun interrupted, trust me on this one. The display flickered as the station's sensors extended their range far beyond normal operational parameters. For several seconds, only the original 17 ships showed on the screen. Then, one by one, additional contacts began to appear. Contact bearing 237 Mark 15. The sensor operator announced, his voice strained. Contact bearing 045 Mark 33. Contact bearing. The announcements continued as more and more Kethari ships materialized on the display. What had begun as a fleet of 17 vessels quickly grew to 30, then 50, then more than 100. By the void, Vexteral whispered. It's not an attack fleet. It's their entire armada. Chin nodded grimly. The 17 ships you detected first are bait. They're counting on you focusing all your attention on the obvious threat, while the real attack force moves into position from multiple vectors. How did you know? Because it's exactly what we would do. Chun moved to the communication station. Captain Rodriguez, are you monitoring this? Yes, ma'am. We count 127 hostile contacts and growing. Orders. Vexteros stared at the human colonel in disbelief. Orders? Colonel, We're facing the largest Kethari fleet in recorded history. Your single ship can't possibly. Commander, Chin said quietly. With respect, you're thinking like a Federation officer. You're trying to figure out how to defend against this attack. What else would we do? We're going to destroy them. The command center erupted in protest from the alien officers. The mathematical impossibility of Chin's statement seemed to offend their sense of logic and military doctrine. One ship, even supported by the station's defenses, could not engage an armada of more than 100 vessels and hope to survive. Chin raised her voice to cut through the chaos. Captain Rodriguez, initiate Protocol 7. Confirmed, Protocol 7 is active. Transmitting authentication codes now. Vexteral watched in confusion as the human ship's communication array came alive with intense activity. Colonel, what is Protocol 7? Something we hoped we'd never have to use, Chin replied, her expression grim. Computer, monitor all subspace frequencies for incoming responses to authentication code Tango 77 Alpha. The command center's main display shifted to show communication activity throughout the local sector. Within minutes, response signals began appearing across the grid. At first, there were only a few scattered contacts. Then dozens. Then hundreds. Were those signals? Vextera demanded. Every human ship within range, Chin answered. Military vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining ships, exploration scouts. Protocol 7 is an all-hands emergency call. Every ship capable of mounting weapons and carrying the fight to the enemy. Commander Zixala pulled up fleet composition data, his expression growing more incredulous with each entry. These ships, most of them are civilian vessels. Cargo haulers with mining lasers, passenger liners with basic defensive arrays. They can't possibly engage Kethari warships. You're right, Chin agreed. They can't. Not individually. The tactical display updated as human ships began transitioning out of FTL drive throughout the sector. Each new arrival added another icon to the growing formation of blue contacts surrounding the red Kethari fleet. Computer, Chun commanded, display comparative force strength. The analysis appeared on screen, showing the opposing fleets in stark numerical terms. The Kethari maintained significant advantages in individual ship firepower, armor protection, and advanced weaponry. But the human fleet now outnumbered them nearly 3-1 and was still growing as more ships arrived. This is insane, Vextera protested. You're sending civilian ships against military vessels. It's not warfare, it's suicide. Commander, Chun said, turning to face the alien officer directly, you've been thinking about this all wrong. You keep trying to understand humans through the lens of galactic military doctrine. But we don't fight the way the rest of the galaxy fights. On the display, the human ships began moving into formation with a coordination that defied their supposedly civilian nature. Cargo haulers took position alongside converted passenger liners. Mining ships formed up with exploration vessels, and throughout the growing fleet, patterns of movement emerged that spoke of shared understanding and common purpose. Every human ship carries emergency military protocols, Chin explained as she watched the deployment. Every human pilot has basic combat training. Every human crew knows how to fight, because on Earth, the alternative to fighting is extinction. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communicator. Colonel, we have 247 ships in formation, and more arriving every minute. Fleet composition is mostly improvised, but we've got enough combined firepower to make this interesting. Weapon status? Mining lasers, industrial cutters, salvage beams, torpedo tubes loaded with cargo containers rigged as kinetic missiles, and about 30 ships with actual military-grade armaments. Vexteral listened to the inventory with growing horror. You're describing a suicide fleet armed with improvised weapons. No, Chun corrected. I'm describing a human fleet. We've been fighting with improvised weapons against superior enemies for our entire history. It's what we do. The Kethari Armada had completed its encirclement of the station and was beginning its final approach. More than 130 of the galaxy's most feared warships moved in perfect formation, their exotic weapons charging for the coordinated strike that would overwhelm the station's defenses in minutes. They had not accounted for finding themselves surrounded by nearly 300 human ships that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. "Kethari fleet is hailing us," the communications officer announced. "Put them through," Vextera ordered. The main display shifted to show the bridge of the Kethari flagship. War Chief Grakthul appeared in all his terrifying glory, his scarred face dominated by burning red eyes and ritual combat implants. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of countless victories. "Federation Station, you will surrender unconditionally. Your defenses are inadequate, your position hopeless. Submit, and your deaths will be quick." Chun stepped forward into the view of the communication pickup. "Hello, Grakthul. I'm Colonel Chun of the United Earth Defense Corps. I think we've met before." The war chief's expression shifted from confident threat to shocked recognition. You were at the Sol System massacre. You commanded the butchers who murdered my brother's fleet." "I was there," Chun acknowledged. "And I'm here now. Impossible. My scouts reported only a single human ship. Your scouts were looking in the wrong place." Chun gestured toward the tactical display visible behind her. "But I'm sure your sensors have updated by now." Grakthul's eyes widened as he processed the scope of the human response. More than 300 ships now surrounded his armada, with more arriving every minute. What should have been a simple station assault had become the largest space battle in galactic history. "You think your merchant ships and salvage haulers can stand against Kethari war vessels?" he snarled. "We are death incarnate. You're surrounded," Chun interrupted. "And we're humans. Which means you're about to learn the difference between fighting for conquest and fighting for survival." The battle began not with the coordinated assault doctrine taught in Federation military academies, but with something far more primitive and terrifying. 300 human ships moved as one organism, flowing around the Kethari formation like water finding cracks in stone. Mining lasers designed to cut through asteroids carved through hull plating. Salvage beams meant to grip derelict spacecraft instead crushed weapon emplacements. Cargo containers filled with industrial explosives became kinetic missiles that punched through shields never designed to stop such crude ammunition. Commander Vextera watched the battle unfold from the station's command center, her understanding of galactic warfare crumbling with each passing minute. This wasn't a space battle as the galaxy understood such things. This was something else entirely, something that spoke to older, more fundamental truths about survival and violence. "Impossible," Captain Zoltan whispered as he watched a human cargo hauler ram directly through a Kethari destroyer, both ships exploding in a ball of plasma that took 2 more pirate vessels with it. "They're sacrificing themselves deliberately." "Not sacrificing," Colonel Chun corrected, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Trading. Every human ship that goes down takes multiple Kethari vessels with it. It's mathematics, not sacrifice." On the tactical display, the numbers supported her grim calculus. The human fleet was taking devastating losses, but the Kethari armada was dying faster. Ships that had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades were being torn apart by converted civilian vessels that shouldn't have posed any threat to military craft. "Ow!" Vextera demanded. "Your ships are inferior in every measurable way." "You're measuring the wrong things," Chun replied, never taking her eyes off the battle. "You're looking at shield strength and weapon output. We're looking at structural weak points and failure cascades." As if to prove her point, a human mining vessel deployed its industrial cutting beam directly against the power coupling of a Kethari cruiser. The beam, designed to slice through solid rock, found a microscopic gap in the enemy ship's armor and carved through the main power conduit. The cruiser went dark, then exploded as its reactor containment failed. Every human ship out there has spent years working in environments that would destroy most galactic vessels, Chun continued. Deep space mining, asteroid salvage, planetary construction. We know how things break because we fix them when they do. War Chief Grakthul's voice crackled over the communication channel, no longer confident, but edged with growing desperation. "This is not battle. This is madness. This is what happens when you threaten a species that evolved from persistence hunters, Chen replied calmly. We don't give up. We don't retreat. We don't stop until the threat is eliminated. The tide of battle was becoming clear. The Kethari, for all their individual superiority, were fighting as separate units following traditional tactics. The humans fought as a single entity, each ship supporting others in ways that turned weaknesses into strengths. When a cargo hauler's improvised weapons failed, 2 mining ships would move in to cover its approach for a ramming attack. When a passenger liner's shields collapsed, 3 exploration scouts would position themselves to screen its retreat. Computer, Vextera commanded, analyze human fleet coordination patterns. Human ships are operating under distributed command structure with real-time tactical adaptation. No central coordination detected, yet fleet movements demonstrate coherent strategic planning. How is that possible? Chen smiled grimly. Every human captain out there has been in situations where the plan fell apart, and they had to improvise. We don't need centralized command because every ship knows what needs to be done. The Kethari formation was beginning to collapse under the relentless pressure. Ships that had never faced an enemy willing to trade losses for victory found themselves overwhelmed by opponents who treated their own destruction as merely another tactical option. Grakthul is trying to withdraw, Captain Rodriguez reported from the human flagship. His remaining ships are attempting to break through our perimeter. Let him, Chun ordered, but make sure he understands the cost of coming back. The human ships parted like a curtain, allowing the surviving Kethari vessels to escape. But as they fled, every human ship that could still fight pursued them, harrying them across light years of space. Mining ships designed for the deep void could operate far from any base. Cargo haulers could sustain themselves for months without resupply, and passenger liners carried the life support capacity to chase an enemy across multiple star systems. When the Kethari finally escaped into FTL drive, they left behind the wreckage of more than 80 vessels. The human fleet had lost nearly half its numbers, but the survivors remained in formation, ready to continue the fight if necessary. The command center of Federation Station Alpha 7 fell silent as the magnitude of what they had witnessed began to sink in. The most feared pirate fleet in galactic history had been broken by an improvised armada of civilian vessels commanded by a species the galaxy considered primitive. Colonel, Vextera said slowly, I owe you an apology. For what? For calling your sword a relic. She gestured toward the tactical display where human ships were already beginning recovery operations for their damaged vessels. I understand now that it's not the weapon that makes the warrior. Shin nodded, her hand unconsciously moving to rest on her blade's hilt. The sword is just a tool, Commander. What makes it effective is the 10,000 years of human experience that taught us how to use it. And your ships. Same principle. They're just tools. What makes them dangerous is that they're operated by humans who've learned that survival means being willing to do whatever it takes. 3 months later, Commander Vextera stood in the same observation deck where she had first met the human delegation. But this time, she wasn't watching Earth through the viewport. She was watching the construction of the newest addition to Federation defenses, a massive orbital station being built by human engineers using techniques that would have been considered impossible by galactic standards. The humans had not only been accepted into the Federation, they had been given responsibility for frontier defense. Their willingness to engage threats that other species considered too dangerous made them invaluable for protecting the outer colonies. Colonel Chun joined her at the viewport, still carrying the same ancient sword that had started everything. Any regrets? Chun asked. About what? Calling us primitive. Vextera's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. I've learned that primitive and ineffective are very different things. Your species may use old tools and old methods, but you use them with a skill that makes them more effective than our most advanced technology. There's something else you should know, Chun said, her expression serious. The Kethari will be back. What we did here will only make them more determined. Are you concerned? Chun looked out at the human construction crews working in the vacuum of space with minimal life support, building defenses that would protect species they barely knew against enemies they had never met. No, she said simply. Humans have been dealing with threats that want to destroy us for millions of years. The Kethari are just another predator. And humans are very good at dealing with predators. Vexteros studied the human woman beside her, seeing her with entirely new understanding. Chun represented something the galaxy had never encountered before, a species that had evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in the face of extinction-level threats. What happens now? Now we get back to work, Chun replied. There are always more threats out there, more challenges to face. That's just how the universe works. And humans will face them. Chin's smile was sharp as her blade. Commander, that's what we do. We're humans. We don't know how to do anything else. As if summoned by her words, reports began flowing into the station's communication systems. Pirate raids in the Vega sector. Unexplored anomalies near the galactic core. Resource conflicts between colonial settlements. Each report represented a crisis that would challenge the Federation's ability to maintain peace and stability. And for each crisis, human ships were already moving to respond. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with threats that could destroy entire civilizations. But for the first time in Federation history, those threats would face an enemy that had been forged in the crucible of a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to threaten a species that considered extinction just another problem to solve. On her hip, Colonel Chin's ancient sword rested in its sheath, waiting for the next challenge that would require the application of 10,000 years of human wisdom about survival, violence, and the will to endure. The autopsy reports on the destroyed Kethari ships would later reveal that they had been defeated not by superior technology, but by superior understanding of how things break, how they fail, and how to use those failures as weapons. Just as Chin's blade had found the weak points in Core Ash's armor, the human fleet had found the weak points in Kethari tactics, technology, and psychology. They called it a relic, right up until it proved them wrong.